Hello there. If you are a regular listener, viewer, however you digest Scotcast, you will know that from the very start we have been asking you to tell us what we should be covering. Scotcast at bbc.co.uk and all of that. And you've really responded to that vigorously and impressively, and our inbox is always really, really interesting. But there is one subject that crops up perhaps more than any other. It seems to get people really energised, and that is the subject of litter. I'm sure you have your own opinions about it, and I'm sure they're probably quite strong opinions, because it's a problem that just doesn't seem to go away. But why not? And who's tackling it? And what are we going to do about it? Well, we told you we'd get around to addressing the subjects that you think we should be covering, and here we are. Today's episode is all about that. Litter. What's going on, and how much does it cost us?
We are in a litter emergency. I have been out litter picking, sometimes just on my own, and people will walk by and go, "Oh, good on you, well done, it just looks awful." And I think, exactly. So take 10 minutes out of your day to fix it.
We have a whole panel of experts on this gear grinding issue with us in the studio today, and they have all lent us a bit of their expertise. Natalie, this is one of those issues that really energises a lot of people, doesn't it? Loads of folk have been in touch about this.
Yeah, we had an email from Peter in Ayrshire. Hello, Peter, who messaged us last week saying a possible topic for you guys would be the scandal of litter. It's everywhere you look, especially at this time of year when grassy areas and roadside verges are bare. Why is nobody talking about it? Do only a handful of good Samaritans care about how our country looks? It's embarrassing. What must visitors think? So Peter, not happy about what he's saying. Although we did also get, and this is the other side of this conversation, an email from Gordon in Dundee back at the start on week 1 of Scotcast back in January, who said, "I've recently discovered a new world, to me anyway, an ecosystem in Scotland all around litter picking. There's a growing number of people volunteering together to help in urban areas, roadside hubs and coastal areas. Indeed, there's a whole range of structured monitoring, training and support which is helping to make sure we know what we're picking, how to recycle or get rid of it best, and importantly keep the pickers, wider community and wildlife safe." How large is this movement in Scotland? And where is it happening? And why has it grown, and when did it start? So Gordon, is getting quite a lot of enjoyment out of his involvement in this as a community-based activity, trying to undo this problem. But it is a problem that we spend well over £1 million a week on, public money, tidying up the litter and fly tipping that's in Scotland.
And that's money spent on top of these volunteers going out and doing it. It's interesting, this phenomenon. There's one old boy around the village where I live who's been working for years, 3, 4, 5 years, I've noticed him, on his own, roadside. Hello, Alec, if you're listening, you do an absolutely brilliant job. Just with his little litter grabber in his bag, doing it stretch by stretch, 100 yards by 100 yards, down embankments, all that. He's retired, and he just says it keeps him busy. God bless him. But, I mean, should we be doing it? It's interesting. And no matter how many people you throw at the problem, it seems it's never cured, because the litter just keeps on building up. As witnessed, actually, by one of our producers this morning. Producer Rebecca, on her way into work, was suitably energised to send us this voice note.
Morning, guys. I just grabbed the coffee. I'm on my way in. I know that obviously I'm aware of litter, but it is genuinely everywhere. Like, there's all the usual suspects, there's plastic bottles, crisp packets that are unrecognisable. But see, instead of a deposit return scheme, do you reckon I could float the idea of a vape return scheme, because the number that I am seeing is unbelievable. Like, I drove in, and see, when I was driving in, I'm not joking, the side of the road, there was a discarded, first of all, roadside litter deserves its own episode, but there was a discarded baby seat, obviously without a baby, but begs the question, where are you going without the baby seat? How are you getting where's the baby? And who are the folk that are flinging baby seats out of their cars?
She is always like that, by the way. That is just standard.
Rebecca.
Relentless. Foot always absolutely down to the metal with whatever she's talking about. It's brilliant. What an inspiration, a little whirlwind to work around. But she's right, though. It's kind of everywhere, isn't it? It is.
BBC is a new one, to be fair.
Well, yeah, and exactly, who does that? But we'll get on to all of that because we've got 3 people who are really invested in this, and I've been speaking to them all. You may be aware of the campaigner, the social media influencer, Laura Young, who goes by the name of Less Waste Laura. She is on top of all of this and an enthusiastic participant in the litter picking phenomenon. Not easy to say. Heather McLaughlin from Keep Scotland Beautiful, whose job it is to persuade us not to create a litter picking phenomenon, to stop that from happening, to stop litter from being dropped. And Kevin Keane, the environment correspondent for BBC Scotland. I've been speaking to them all. Laura, hi.
Hi.
Heather, hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for being with us. Kevin, hi.
Hi, Martin.
Heather, Keep Scotland Beautiful. Let me just ask you the first obvious question. Is it completely physically impossible for you to walk past a piece of litter in the street?
I have to pick it up. If I've got spare hands, it's getting picked up.
Right. There is a lot of that going on, is there not? Laura, we were hearing about litter picking groups. Scotland's Spring Clean campaign starts next week for a month. Councils up and down the country saying, get out there, pick up the litter, all that. That's very much your wheelhouse, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, individually, love to, I'm the same as Heather. You can't walk past something without picking it up. I'm also a dog owner, so every day I've got little poo bags in my pocket, so I can almost get a mini litter pick going. But yeah, part of loads of community groups. And I think there are, there's schools, primary schools. Just last week, I was visiting a primary school just outside of Glasgow who every Tuesday, the primary eco committee go out and litter pick. But you've got even things like Rotary clubs, sports clubs, businesses that all are part of it. And so, yeah, that's a big part of what I get up to in my spare time, is being a part of these community groups that just clean up their areas.
That's all lovely and virtuous and all that. But when a council says, get out there and pick up the litter, are we not entitled to say, no, you do it? Well, that's what we pay you for.
Well, they do. And we pay a lot. It's
more now.
£1 million a week is
know.
how much we spend. And so partly, I think these community groups are bridging a gap. They shouldn't have to, but I think they are there to ultimately deal with a problem that is just so huge. There's just litter everywhere. So, yeah, ideally I would love it if the councils could do it, but I would ideally love it if people didn't drop litter and we didn't have to do it in the first place. But I think community groups, it's something that they can do to try and help and make their areas look better.
I mean, is it too unkind, Kevin, to say that this is just not a priority for councils? They'll say we don't have the money. The response to that is you do. You've got plenty of money and you're about to get 8, 10, 15% more money, depending on how much extra now you're charging for your council tax. But politics is just about choice and you don't see this as a priority.
Yeah, but it's also not fair to say that we don't have the money because, as Laura says, they are spending that money. And actually the figure that Laura talked about is just the core, about £60 million a year, the core of it. Actually, if you add in lots of other costs that come with having to deal with this issue, you're talking probably around £200 million just in the public sector. So the private sector on top of that, maybe having to deal with waste on some of the properties that they own, that's a lot more on top of that. So it's probably not right to say that they're not spending any money on it, that they're not prioritising it. They're not spend. They could. Obviously they could spend more money. They could send more people out to collect this stuff. It's just a kind of, it's like the Forth Bridge used to be. You used to get to one end of it and you'd painting it and you'd have to go back and paint it again. It's exactly the same with litter.
And I was reading some stats today as well. It's not just the whatever it is, £1 million a week plus we spend on picking it up. There's the same again, or half again, in unseen costs, Heather. They were saying that, mental health impact, safety impact, devaluation of property, all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's a lot of money it's costing us, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. And litter is something that angers a lot of people, as we know. And it's not just about walking past and seeing a crisp packet, seeing a vape, whatever it might be. It is devaluing our streets and our economy. It has a big impact on tourism. We are proud of the country we all live in, but we have tourists coming here and driving up north and seeing litter everywhere. It's impacting tourism and our economy too.
More than that tourism thing is really fascinating because a few weeks ago I was at Arica at the top of Loch Long, and that's a notorious place for having huge amounts of Glasgow's litter that's blown into the River Clyde that then passes the end of Loch Long and is blown up the length of it, all lands on this one beach at Arica. And it's a really disgusting place to see. It all gets entangled in the seaweed there, so it's almost impossible to clean up. And you can see if there's a beach clean that's happened there, there, you'll see the big bags of rubbish that have been collected, and yet still you see lots and lots of the waste on there. And I remember being there. There's a car park right next to it. It's, on the Rest and Be Thankful route. And I saw this two guys get out of a German registered car, and they walked over and they took a picture down Loch Long, and then they looked at their feet and they went, ooh.
What is
Absolutely
it?
disgusting.
Is it thick with
It's
litter?
deep.
That beach?
We've done a litter pick there, and you sit down. You can spend 2 hours in the same spot, digging deeper and deeper and deeper. It's
buried.
It's absolutely. You can pull seaweed out, and in the roots there's bits of plastic. We've just done a whole campaign with schools across the Clyde Valley, trying to raise awareness of the fact that in South Lanarkshire, if you drop litter, it might end up in Loch Long and at the top of Arrochar. And the schools have been researching that sort of pathway that litter that they might drop could take. It's horrific. It really
There's also a bit of a tragedy element to it as well, because back in the 1950s, that was almost like the perfect example of a sustainable way of farming, for example. So all of that seaweed they used to get washed up there, farmers used to come from far and wide, and they would collect it in bags, take it back to their land, and it would be a natural fertilizer for the land. Now you cannot get a bag of seaweed that's not also got half a bag of litter in it, and so it's completely useless for that.
So have they completely stopped using it, the farmers?
Yeah, you just can't, because otherwise you're spreading plastic waste all over your land. That's no use at all.
All this stuff you don't think about. Heather, the government launched a national litter strategy in 2014. More than a decade ago now, rather grandly entitled Towards a Litter-Free Scotland. How's that working out?
Well, we've got actually a new strategy published 2 years ago. So there's a national litter and fly tipping strategy that we're in year 2 of. And alongside that, we have a separate, but does talk to one another, marine litter strategy as well.
But we've scrapped the idea of a litter-free Scotland.
We're still toward a litter-free Scotland. That's what we want.
Is it worse than it used to be, Laura?
Absolutely. I mean, it's something that you just continually see year on year building. And growing up, I exclusively went on holiday around Scotland to lots of lovely seaside villages. I have no memories of going litter picking on beaches or finding crisp packets and coffee cups when I went on holiday as a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old. Now, I'll go to primary schools to give talks about litter, and they say, oh, when we go on holiday to the beach, we always do a litter pick. We're always collecting things. And that's children getting these fundamental memories of their holidays surrounded by litter. So even anecdotally, you're hearing it, but it is something that's getting worse. And I think part of that's also because we have a real convenience culture.
Yeah, we've got a stuff problem.
Oh, I mean, if I sit and talk to my granddad, who's nearly 89, he goes, back in my day, you would never have a coffee on the go. You'd never have a bottle of juice and a bottle of Coke and a bottle of whatever. You went out and did your work, did your whatever. And he said, nowadays, everybody's got stuff on them. You've got wrappers, you've got, meal deals, you've got coffee cups. I mean, go into Glasgow city centre, Edinburgh city centre at rush hour. Everybody's got a takeaway coffee. Now, not everybody's littering those, but the point is that we have so much consumption and disposability, and then people want to get rid of it. People cannot seem to put it in their pocket, put it in their bag, or keep it in their car till they get home or get to a bin, and we are now seeing stuff being thrown away. But I think part of that is this idea that we now have so much packaging and waste that we are creating, that has also seen this trend of littering increasing. One
of the guys in our meeting this morning when we were discussing this came up with a really kind of counterintuitive theory, and he said he'd been taught about it at school. That's how young he is, and that was yesterday almost. But he frighteningly young, frighteningly smart, right? Brighter than the rest of us combined.
Not just that you're old, Martin.
Both things can be simultaneously true. So he said, look, here's the idea, right? With bins, actually, one of the solutions is take the bins away. He said that there's a theory, right, on a beach that if you say you've been having a pizza on a beach, I mean, perish the thought the sand would get in it, but it just lets you, because it's a piece of box, is a useful device for this argument, right? So if you're on the beach and you finish your pizza and you go to the bin and the bin's full because it hasn't been emptied for a while, it just becomes that magnetic place where you leave your litter. And even if you're a right-thinking person, you think, well, I'll just stick it down at the side here, and you know it's going to blow away, but you just think you're doing the right thing. If there's no bin, you'll take it home.
Yeah. We've done, so one of the questions we always get asked or told is we need more bins.
Yeah.
It's something we always get asked. And sometimes it is the case that we need a bin in a different location or a bigger bin or a better service bin.
But we have an emptied bin.
An empty bin. But we have done trials along roadside in the verges where we've taken away bins and it's reduced the litter, because we think people are going, there's a bin here, even if it's full, it's getting service, so I can leave it next to it, and whenever the vehicle comes to empty it, they'll take my stuff away too. So we have done trials, and it has decreased litter removing bins.
And is that they don't empty it when they're emptying the bin, or that it just gets blown into a burn before
Well, I think
anyone's
it just
had a
accumulates,
chance?
and the guys are on sort of tight schedules. When they pull up, they have to empty the bins and hopefully do a litter pick around about it.
I mean, we can give a little bit of leeway, right, to the people who see a full bin and think, oh, God, I'm just trying to do the right thing. If I leave it on top, maybe somebody's just round the corner to empty it and it'll be... But you know it's not going to work like that. But let's give them a little bit of leeway. But the majority of people, we still have too many people amongst us in society who are happy just to drop stuff or chuck it away. And look, I'm not blaming you, Heather, but it's the job of Keep Scotland Beautiful to educate people not to do that. The message isn't getting through, is it?
No, it's not.
Why not?
No, what we'd love to see is a national campaign that's on every TV and advert out there saying, remember to bin your litter and take it home. It's your responsibility. We haven't got the budget to do that. And we've talked about local authorities, we've talked about businesses. It's everyone's collective responsibility to help fund and convey the right messages to the people out there that they need to do the right thing. And we would say again, it isn't the local authorities dropping litter, it's people. So what do we need to do to change those behaviours and make them feel more responsible?
Are there places that get this right? Other countries?
Well, quite often I get emails saying, I was just abroad in Rome and it was beautiful. It's all Scotland's problem or the UK's problem. But I, twice over the last couple of years, have been presenting in European cities with colleagues at similar organisations and with local authorities who are saying we've got a problem too. So it isn't just a UK problem. I think that is a bit of a myth.
But I think there are some initiatives. Are we allowed to utter the words deposit return scheme? Right? Here we go.
Yes.
Because actually there are some countries where, particularly for drinks cans or bottles, they get it right because there's an incentive, a financial incentive to take it back. And, you know, the Tartan Army went to Germany and managed to navigate the deposit return scheme just fine when they went over there. And so I think that is the kind of scheme that could help with specific types. I think there's also a cultural thing. You know, you do go to some countries and they've just got this real pride and culture of looking after places. Like in Asia, where you would never see a bit of chewing gum, you know, stuck to the ground. So I think there are places that we can model off of. But I do also think there is a bit of a role for businesses. And if you take the pizza box in a seaside town, that is the perfect example where if you think about the size of a bin, 20 pizzas, and that bin is absolutely stacked full. So if you are the local takeaway pizza shop in a seaside town, I guess you have a bit of a responsibility to think, well, if we are punting out all of these pizzas and all of our boxes are going to end up in the bins, could we help in some way by, I don't know what the solution might be, collecting some, putting up their own bins to say that they'll come and get them? Because I think that is also a piece of the puzzle that we need to be considering. Right,
I mean, you're talking about incentivising, that's the carrot. What about the stick? What's the punishment for dropping litter at the moment? What happens to you if you're caught?
So there were increases in fines. I can't remember the exact figures, but I think the figure went from about £200 for littering from a car, say, up to about 500. Correct me if I'm wrong there. And I think they were the Scottish Government was talking about potentially increasing it to £1,000.
Do you know anybody who's been fined for it? Does anybody here know anybody who's had a ticket for dropping litter? I don't. I've never heard of it.
I mean, that was the key bit of your question. What happens when you're caught? Well, who's ever caught? You know, there is no policing of this. I think fly tipping, which is the kind of extreme end of littering, we do have very good initiatives to look at fly tipping, but that is...
But people try not to get caught. You know what I mean? You're not going to just casually ditch a fridge at the trailer behind your car. You do that. I mean,
It's planned.
You do that. I don't.
You do that.
I'm telling you how to do it. One would imagine that the people who do that do it under cover of darkness and away from prying eyes, right? Because it's a serious problem, a serious crime.
And I think part of the issue with littering is it's a 1 second offence. You just drop something and you move on. And there's some
It's just
littering
parking
that's...
on a yellow line in my experience. You can get caught doing that by these mosquitoes who zip around on their scooters. Doesn't take long to catch you doing that. I mean, who's meant to be? Who enforces this? Is it the police or the council, or who gives you a ticket?
I think it's a civic offence.
It's a council's, but no council has to have enforcement officers. So when budgets are slashed, unfortunately, the things that they don't have to do is the first to go.
There's a beauty spot near me, and it never ceases to amaze me. There's even a bin there, I think. But you go there, and people have parked up, and you'll see the kind of paper burger takeaway bag full of all the burger. They've been sitting in the car, looking at the view, eating the burgers. They just open the door and drop the bag beside the door and drive out. Who are these monsters?
we need to do a stakeout, I think, and
Yes, that's
be
a good
there
idea.
with a litter enforcement officer. And there are some acceptable types of litter, cigarette butts, chewing gum. Like, these are things that they've become so normal now. They're not acceptable to, I'm sure, everyone in this room. But I think there are things that people think, well, somebody will come along behind me. Maybe it's the council's job. Maybe it's the local litter picking group and Keep Scotland Beautiful. But I think we need to challenge that.
Yeah.
But it is unfortunately just lazy people who want to hide their takeaway.
They're a big percentage of the problem, cigarette butts, aren't they?
It is the number one global littered item.
Right.
They are everywhere, whether that's on a beach, in a park, on the street. They are the number one item.
And they don't biodegrade.
They've got plastic in them.
But people don't think of that as littering. You finish a cigarette, chuck it
No.
on the ground,
Yes,
slip it out with your foot, off you go. It's
Yeah.
just kind of, it's always been that way.
And actually now, if we go on that trend, we're seeing things like vapes being littered as well, right? Because it's that kind of smoking and vaping litter. And it's just so normal now for people to throw these small devices down that are causing a big impact.
On that vapes issue, just to extend it even further, there's a really bizarre phenomenon. If there's a shop that sells a lot of vapes,
Oh, yeah.
and you have a look for this if you've never noticed it before, you'll see a bin nearby, and there must be like a little plastic tab. I don't vape. There must be a little like plastic
Sticker.
sticky tab,
Stickers, yeah.
and people will go along and they'll stick them on the bin, and you see these bins that are painted with these little tiny plastic stickers.
Yeah, it's the first layer coming off the vape package.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were saying, Kevin, that cigarette butts have got plastic in them. They're not the only thing they've got plastic in them. We have got plastic in us now as a consequence of litter, don't we? How does that work?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not that long ago when we were horrified at the prospect that marine life was eating the plastic. Remember the big David Attenborough Blue Planet 2 documentary? And we saw not just the entanglement, but the digestion of a lot of these
poor
plastic
turtle.
products.
Yeah.
But, I mean, where are we getting that fish that we eat from? Most of it we get from that very marine life. So, that then essentially ends up in us. And so,
we're finding traces of it in our bloodstream. Are we plastic in our blood?
in recent years, we've been starting to find some of that. Yeah, scientific studies have been looking at that, and yeah, it is in there.
That's terrifying. Heather, if you see somebody drop a crisp packet, you tell them to pick it up.
Depends who it looks like.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
And I could never ask anyone to do that. We can't ask volunteers to challenge everyone they see because that would be unsafe. But depending on who it is, you do. And I have seen sort of kids say to parents, "Oh, Dad, you can't do that." I've watched that in the street, which is really nice to see. But again, they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, it does depend on who it is. Doesn't it? Even you, Laura, I suspect.
Oh, well, I don't know. I'm happy
If you
to
told me
take
to
on
pick something up,
a
I'd pick it up.
No, normally my line, if you can get away quick enough, is, "Oh, sorry, I think you've just dropped something there."
Yeah.
You sort of try, and rather than going and giving them a lecture. And sometimes, if it's a group of people, the embarrassment factor of their peers, because people will go, "Oh gosh, can't believe you dropped that. That's, come on, poor show." So, but I agree, it is one of those things that you think a crisp packet is not worth
Yeah.
getting into a fight for.
And sell me the community litter picking idea. Just persuade me that I should be part of this phenomenon.
Well, here's the thing, right? I have been out litter picking, sometimes just on my own, and people will walk by and go, "Oh, good on you, well done, it just looks awful." And I think, exactly. So take 10 minutes out of your day to fix it. So part of it is just about you feel better because that pocket of park that you walk past that always looks awful, you can just deal with it and everybody can enjoy it. There's also the wildlife bit. Come on, it's just nice to know that our lovely wildlife is not at risk. But I think community groups, it is a great opportunity to meet people. There's lots of groups that get out and can actually spend some time together. And I know lots of them go for a coffee after, or, people do plogging, which is like jogging and picking up litter. It's exercise. Don't laugh.
Plogging.
It is really.
I'm going out for a Sunday morning
Do you know,
plog.
you'll feel a lot better. But I think it's, it's something that it does. It brings people together. And, we are coming up to this big spring clean, and it's a great effort where people do it. And there's a Rotary Club in Ayrshire that's taken on a big bit of the coast. Brilliant. There's primary schools that go out and do around their grounds. There's businesses that give staff time. Like, it is something that is just really good. And I think part of it is it just helps. We are in a litter emergency. Like, this is really bad. And I think going back to something we talked about at the beginning, there's this thing called the broken window theory, right? So you can have a lovely neighbourhood, and as soon as a window breaks and doesn't get fixed, or litter is dropped, or graffiti appears, you slowly begin to see the deterioration of that area if it's not fixed. And then that can lead to really big things like an increase in crime. And there's been lots of research, lots of studies. So part of it's also recognising that it might not have been me that dropped that cigarette butt or that packet of crisps, but I don't want this area to deteriorate. And I think that community spirit is really difficult. I think we are losing that, but that's part of it as well.
And that broken window theory, that was Rudy Giuliani, wasn't it? As mayor of New York, he stepped in and said, we'll fix the windows and then the communities will build. And they did, and it really did. So the converse is true. If you do pick up the litter and you do get the place spruced up, everybody, even subconsciously, buys into that, feels better for it, and plays a little part too.
Yeah, and I think we sort of see litter picking and the topic of litter as the most tangible environmental thing you can talk about. When I tell people I work for Keep Scotland Beautiful, they go, that sounds lovely, but what does that mean? And I say, well, we look at the climate emergency, we try and restore nature and biodiversity, and we tackle litter and waste, and they go, oh, litter. And it's always that thing that they hone in on because it's tangible, we all understand it, we all get annoyed about it. And for groups who are trying to engage their wider community and or schools, this is a topic that anyone can get involved with and everyone can join.
Yeah, I mean, it's not controversial. And I think, anytime I speak to people about my work, you sometimes bring up things like net zero and then people are either with you or not with you and it becomes quite controversial. But litter, everybody wants to solve it. Everybody wants to get involved. It's also cross-political party, which is quite helpful.
Yes,
yeah.
Every local councillor wants to go on a litter pick and get a photo, but actually that can be quite a good thing, that it can be a uniting issue. It's just sometimes when we then look into the policies of how to deal with it, it gets a bit messy.
Yeah, interesting. Nobody is pro-litter, are they? If you are pro-litter, Scotcast at bbc.co.uk, let us know. Tell us why you're pro-litter. You will get short shrift, I warn you. Listen, we're going to leave it there. Laura, Heather, Kevin, thank you all so much.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was really shocked by what Laura was saying about primary school children saying that litter picking is a feature of their summer holidays now, because that is not something I remember
No.
being a feature of mine.
Shocked by the fact that they needed to do it, or shocked that, it's a good thing they're doing it.
Yeah, I just don't think that I hadn't really quite registered that this is a problem that seems to be spiralling quite that much.
Are we really ruling out vigilantism?
Well, I mean,
I'm not sure
I don't think I want any part in this on the record, but I empathise with your rage about it. I mean, the money
Sort
is
out the
also
fly tippers. That's what we should be doing.
the money is also a lot. I mean, the number that was mentioned there is about £200 million a year of public money. And
For everything,
I mean, and the numbers are a little bit, there's not particularly recent numbers. There's a degree of kind of estimation going on there, but let's just accept that figure of £200 million
what does that
of
equate
public
to? What does
money.
that mean?
Well, I mean, the amount that I've looked at the Scottish budget to see what else we spend £200 million on a year. I mean, in the 2024-25 budget, it's more or less the budget for the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service prosecuting crimes. It's this year's share of the £1 billion that we're spending over the course of the Parliament on child poverty and the attainment gap. So
Whoa.
I think
We spend as much on litter as we spend on child poverty.
now, some of if we didn't drop a single crisp packet ever again, some of that money might still get spent on things. It doesn't mean that we wipe out all of that spend, but it's a lot of money that we ultimately could just be spending it on something different if we didn't have to solve this problem at all.
It's funny, though. We hear a lot about the amount of money the government spends on child poverty. We don't hear much about the amount of money it's spending on litter. I don't know why. But
These are, I suppose, they're sort of unseen tasks, aren't they?
they are.
That we don't
They are.
think about until they become a problem, like it was for Rebecca this morning with her abandoned baby seat on the verge.
And her memorable but characteristic voice message.
When I
God
first
bless
heard
her.
that, I thought it was an abandoned baby, which would admittedly have been a much more problematic thing to encounter and probably not something you should send a voice note about as your first response.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, keep them coming, Rebecca. Keep getting in touch with us. Keep talking. We don't have a worry there, but you keep them coming as well. We asked you for ideas for subjects we could cover, and you responded, and you keep responding. Look, we're true to our word. We do cover them because they're really interesting, and I think we've just delivered a cracker of an episode there with 3 really engaging voices. So tell us what else you think we should be getting on top of. Scotcast at bbc.co.uk is how you drop us that note.
And we do read all of them.
We really do, and enthusiastically and with great pleasure. So yeah, keep it all coming in. But that's it from us for now. We'll be back in your feeds and on your tellies very, very soon. Thanks for being with us. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.